my dear friends. Today I have a dear friend of mine. And maybe some of you already know her. When you see this beautiful face, you already know who she is. She's Mary Jane Roy. She is an online corporate advisor, facilitator, presenter, and writer, building employee resiliency skills to create staying power. And I am very blessed to say, to have the honor to call her my friend. She came up with the brilliant idea of writing a book on female leadership, and she had the kindness to invite me. So we have become co-authors of the female leadership book. So I have asked her this difficult question. If you knew then what you know now, what would you advise yourself, particularly in the past 12 months, being such a tough year? So what would be your answer? What are the lessons for this year, Mary Jane?
Well, yeah, I didn't think of it in context only of this year, Blanca. I was just thinking from my 67-year-old perspective that if I could go back 40 years or maybe 45 years, you know, knowing what I know now, what would I do differently as a younger version of me? And as I mentioned to you just before we started recording, I have come up with quite a list. But first, before that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me onto this interview or into this interview, but also for calling me a friend, because I do consider you, I think we know each other now close to 10 years. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what I really like about you is that we just don't know each other. We know each other like this, but we know each other profoundly. We have shared important things, and that you don't have that with everybody.
No, that's true. That's true. We've had some really deep conversations over the years, haven't we? Yeah. And so going back to try and answer, I think one of the first things that came into my mind when asking myself this question was I would have worked earlier on my confidence, on my self-efficacy, the belief in myself, all right? And not relied so much, Blanca, on what others thought of me. I think I spent the first 50 years of my life worried about what others were thinking about me. And so that would be lesson number one. And I think that applies for all of us, you know. Yeah.
If I may, what's your secret sauce? How were you able to quiet what will they say and make louder the voice of I trust you, I love you, go for it?
Well, I think, and if I had learned this earlier, I think I would have saved my health as well. But for me, and you've probably heard me say this before, I think developing emotional self-regulation skills. I can really say that when I started to apply those strongly in my life, that I noticed immediately a change in the level of confidence that I have. I think because I was no longer dependent on what others were thinking about me. But so that emotional self-regulation, I call it emotional agility, emotional self-control. Once I started on that path, made a huge difference. So that would be not so secret sauce.
Yeah. Reading.
Yeah.
It is so important.
Yes. I mean, it changes everything when you stop giving control to others. And this was something that a man, I have no idea who he is any longer, but he was a member of a club that I was working in at the time in Ireland. And so it's over 20 years that he gave me this piece of advice. he saw me react in anger to something somebody had said to me. And he said, you know, if you allow someone to make you angry, if you react without what I learned later, putting the gap in between stimulus and response, but if you just have that knee-jerk reaction, you're giving your power away to that person. And I remember sitting at the table in a little restaurant in the fitness club, and I was dumbfounded. It was like one of the biggest aha moments that I'd ever experienced. And I thought, this is absolutely true. So from that moment on, I became a lot more conscious as well of how I was responding. And breathing for me gives me that gap. All right. So it calms me enough so that I'm not reacting in a way that I'm going to regret later. Yeah.
This is so important. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about your list. What will be your next point?
You're so curious about what?
About your list. What will be your next point?
Oh, so I think the other one, and this is partly what my essay covers in the book that we co-authored with 26 other authors, so we're 28 in total. And that is that I would never have grabbed onto Renee's coattails when I married him and gone for his ride. I would have created my own ride for myself. Because in doing that, I really did leave myself behind. And it took me until I was 52 to really come to that understanding. So for the first 25 years of our marriage, I was basically on his ride and not doing what was making my heart sing. So I think that would be another piece of advice I would give. Go for your own ride, go on your own ride. And don't settle for someone else's. As much fun as it was, and you know, all the adventure we had, but it wasn't mine. So that would be my next bit of advice.
Also big. I feel you. Possibly this was one of my lessons this year. We were living in this beautiful house. We're living in this beautiful house that I never really dared to say, this is what I want. Then I made this painting this year and I hang it, and I bought this plant, this like a small things. How do you want to live your life? I really love what you say, the right.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And you know, I think if not doing that earlier, it really did have an effect on my health. So to anybody who listens to this, go on your own ride, take your own journey. And then one other that I thought about, because again, this was all in my early 50s that I sort of had this wake up call and started on the journey that I'm on now. And that is, I wish I had spent more time learning. I feel like a vacuum cleaner now, you know, I'm just, you know, sucking up information and knowledge. But I had about a 25-year hiatus of not doing that and actually thinking, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to, you know, learn anything new or whatever. But now that I've started this, what we call lifelong learning, and I don't think I'll ever stop. And knowing just how good it is for our brains makes me want to do it even more. So for the health of our brains, this is really critical that up to the day we die, we can continue to learn, we can continue to develop new neural pathways, new neural connections. So this neuroplasticity, malleability of the brain is really, it really is significant for our brain health. And but I didn't start doing it for that reason, but I've only recently in the last couple of years learned more about the neuroplasticity of the brain and how important lifelong learning is. So keep learning, keep challenging yourself, because things are changing so drastically and so often. We need to be open to learning. So that would be, I think that would be one of the most significant learning experiences for me is just how important this is.
Yeah. It's so fundamental. because it keeps us as children in the world of curiosity and openness and the ability to take risks, and it keeps your brain young, but it also keeps your body young.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. And then I think the last one I would give to your listeners, to your viewers, is that I would have ensured that my voice was heard earlier than what I did. So too often I sat in the background, thinking that what I had to say or what I wanted to share wasn't probably important enough. And that doesn't happen any longer. So I think that would be also some advice that I would give to my younger self. And speak up. Let your voice be heard.
Take space.
Take space.
Take space.
I think you teach that. I think that's essential to what you're teaching women. And yeah. I wish I'd had a Blanca in my life when I was in my early 20s.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say.
Yeah.
It is so important that we speak up.
Yeah.
We have been trained to be quiet. I see my little daughter, 9 years old, and sometimes I think, hey, shh. And then I think, no, please say.
Speak up.
It's an early childhood when we start training the girls, the women, to keep quiet. And no, we have to be conscious already to say, what you're saying.
Exactly. And another thing that we do to young girls, young boys, of course, as well, but is how we treat them in terms of developing their self-confidence and developing that self-efficacy and the belief in themselves. And it starts at such a young age. So again, you are so right to be conscious now with your children at a younger age and helping them develop and grow into solid adults without a lot of the hang-ups that many of us do.
Yeah, because it is now. I am so delighted to have you in this interview. We're doing it very short, but I'm going to create more. So I'm going to leave everybody curious for all the lessons that they need to learn from Mary Jane, and read that story about the ride in our book, that I will put the link where you can get it, because it's not just the stories of Mary Jane and myself, but many other authors, men and women. So it's very interesting to read what men think about female leadership. So if you are new to this series is 30 days, 30 lessons that, as you see, there are more than one lesson per day, about what we have learned, what advice we will give to our younger self. And I'm doing some videos myself, and I have invited some of my friends. Expect to see people who are absolutely amazing, just like my dear Mary Jane, so that we start 2022 on a high. So it's my end of year gift. And Mary Jane, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you again, Blanca. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.